Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Good night. Yeah, May, I know that I think it's 2 o'clock in the morning where you are, so your presence is always wonderful to have, along with everybody else's.
Actually, it's my pleasure and honor to be able to join you all, and deeply appreciate all your sessions. Thank you.
So in the message of non-duality, it's always pointing to a one reality. It's pointing to this one substance, this one fabric that everything that we know arises out of. We could call this one fabric totality. It's everything. And yet, our mind being finite, we can't understand that. We can conceptualize it, but we could never truly get it, so to speak. So let's attempt to put ourselves in a position to where we have a better chance of understanding this. Because it's in this foundational understanding that there's only one in which all arises out of. Once that is bridged and understood more and more, it means you're just coming home closer and closer to yourself. So imagine a massive body of water. But this body of water, this ocean of water, has no surface. It has no floor. It has no edges to it or boundaries in any way. It's not bounded by anything. And this ocean of water consists of countless water molecules, in which you are one of these molecules. And you're perceiving this ocean of water. And as far as you look out, you can never ever know anything other than water. Water, the body, the water within the body and ocean of this massive ocean cannot be found. Even when you try to step outside of it, if you attempted to try to step outside of it, you would only find more of it. You would only find more water. Therefore, there is no outside of it. And if you tried to pull it apart internally to see what else you could find, all you would find is more of it. Meaning there's no inside of it. There's no way for you to position yourself relative to anything else, because every water molecule is identical to the other. You cannot determine one relative to another. It's not like there's a yellow one and a red one, and you can move relative to these two and triangulate yourself in any way. In the absence of color, you are locationless. And when you're locationless, that means that you've lost any sort of dimension. There's no forms of any kind. It's dimensionless space. And dimensionless space is known as infinite. In the terms of the physicists, it's known as non-local. You cannot position yourself within it at all. There's no progression. There's no, because you can't determine where you are stationed or where you're localized, that means you can't have any progression of any kind. There is no movement. The experience of the absence of progress is the absence of time. Time only comes into play when there's movement from one to another, or one relative to something else, where there's progress. The experience of the absence of progress or movement, meaning the absence of time, is the experience of eternity. Eternity is the absence of time. So as you experience yourself as this molecule within this massive body of water, you're experiencing eternity and the infinite simultaneously. And what could be considered the most profound piece of this is that this body of water doesn't even exist relative to the definition that we understand existence. Because for something to exist, it has to stand separate relative to something else. For something to exist, it has to exist independent of other things. And what we're experiencing here is the absence of other. The infinite and eternal has no other. It only has itself. It's only itself. So we could say its existence itself. It doesn't exist, but it is existence. Because of the grandeur of itself, this ocean of water cannot separate itself. It knows no other than itself. It therefore does not have the ability to know separation, hence suffering. It has no idea what that is because it only knows itself. Itself as pure unity. Itself as pure contentment, as pure peace, because there's nothing other than it to disturb it. So it's benevolent. It's then recognized that it is aware of itself. You as a water molecule within this infinite ocean become aware of your own self. And because all other water molecules are equivalent to you, then they must exist and are conscious as well. So now you're experiencing yourself as an ocean of consciousness that's benevolent, that knows no other than itself, that is no other than itself. Recognizing its own self-awareness, it asks itself a question. Who am I? It starts an inquiry into itself to see who it is, to see who you are, to see what this fabric of consciousness, this ocean of awareness is. And it starts off by taking its vastness, by taking its expansiveness, its allness, and compressing it down into movement. So we have this expansive body of water that's compressing itself down into what we could say are two different compressions that can now move relative to each other. We could say that this is a current within the ocean, where a current is the movement of water in two different directions. It starts to understand if it compresses itself down, it can come into forms of itself that it hasn't experienced before. And so this is starting its inquiry. It can then take itself and compress itself down into whirlpools. So now it has dynamic motion. And yet, it never ever becomes something separate from itself. The water never ever becomes separate from itself. The current or the whirlpool is not a separate existence from the water itself. So we start to see how everything could arise out of the no-thingness. It then could go one step further and do a massive collapse, which we would call the Big Bang. But the Big Bang is an explosion. This is the inverse of that, because the body of consciousness is already expansiveness itself. It can only collapse itself. So it collapses itself into the Big Bang. It collapses itself into what appears to be elements and gases and matter, stars, planets, galaxies, universes. And yet, at its source, it's nothing other than water appearing as galaxies and stars and universes. And then it gets extremely detailed, and it creates the human form. This human form that is comprised of trillions of cells, and each cell has millions of reactions, these chemical, electrical reactions. And this is the description of the body. And the body has these 5 senses: the sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound. And from here, it's compressed itself down into a form that is so perfect that it can now perceive. It can see itself, its form, as it looks back onto the prior collapses of universe, galaxies, stars, matter, gases, whirlpools, currents, and itself. It's nearing the end. As a human form, it's nearing the end of the initial inquiry. For the initial final inquiry is when it realizes that it is only itself. It's when the human form allows itself to have the courage to look back through all of this manifestation, back to the source of itself. Does the inquiry end? It ends where it began. It ends with the direct acknowledgement that I am an ocean of consciousness. This inquiry back into consciousness itself is the direct path. We are bypassing the human form. We're bypassing the human mind. We're bypassing the physical manifestations of the universes and everything that's contained in it. We're bypassing the motion, and we're going straight to the ocean. And the ocean is knowing, it's conscious, it exists, and it's benevolent. In Advaita terms, it's Sat Chit Ananda, being, awareness, bliss. And we have a direct path back to it. We can understand how it can form, how it can rise, and because of that understanding, we now understand what it would mean to go back to the source. And those on the path, those that have tapped into the curiosity of this, that inherently know that somehow of what was just described is the truth. And we have and continue to courageously show up and ask the questions and inquire to get back to that single experience, that single benevolent, non-objective experience of ourself, which we inherently know is the truth and it exists. And this turning within is known as self-enquiry. We just continue to inquire and understand and investigate what it means to remember who we are. And we know when we get back home is when we have no more questions, because we are the answer. So what is it in our direct experience that when we do sit in stillness and silence, in self-inquiry, what is it that is this ocean? What are we experiencing there that could equate to everything that was described when we use the body of water? It's actually silence. Silence, which is more than just the absence of sound. It's the silence of being. Is this ocean of water? Is this ocean of consciousness? It meets every one of these criteria that we just walked through, meaning you can't step outside of it. There's no internal aspect of it. It didn't come from anywhere. It's content as it is. It's benevolent. You can't add to it, because the only thing you could add to it would be sound, and now it's no longer silence. And if you do experience sound, it can only be the silence that's compressed itself down into sound. And therefore the sound is nothing other than silence expressing itself as sound. And what has to be there in the silence as you're experiencing it? Awareness, consciousness. The silence is consciousness itself. And so that's the direct path. That's turning our attention back into that silence and abiding and resting there to experience the ocean of consciousness of I am. So as we walk through the progression one more time, where this infinite body, this infinite eternal body of pure knowledge, and we set off on this trek to answer the question, who am I? And we started with motion and movement that compressed down into gases and matter and stars and universes, into the human form, which then turns around and looks back into that progression, back into the source of itself, to remember that it is nothing, the human is nothing than infinite consciousness expressing itself as a human form. And it's in that acknowledgement that peace and contentment and wholeness and satisfaction are experienced. Because that is the definition of consciousness, of awareness. The finish line is the starting line. They're not two. It does appear, we can't deny, it does appear that we've left ourselves and we're coming home to ourselves. But in reality, that's only an illusion. We've never left ourselves. Because there is only ourself.